Let's get started. This is Mo Bedard with Gnostic Warrior Radio, GnosticWarrior.com, and today I am interviewing James Robert Wright. He goes by Jay, and he is a 32-degree Freemason, actually ex-Freemason, and he is the author of two books. One book's coming out here shortly. The first book he's done is Freemasonry's Cult Abuses. He has a Facebook website page. It's called facebook.com/Occupy Freemasonry /info. Is that correct? Or no, that's the About page. Sorry, that's where I'm at right now. So it's just Occupy Freemasonry. That's where you could find him. I'm a member of that page as well. I've listened to several interviews of Jay, and it's been a pleasure to hear what he's had to say about Freemasonry, and I have some questions today that are going to be a little bit different than some of the interviews that he's done before. Let me see here. Can you state how old you are, Jay, and any nicknames for our listeners so they can learn a little bit more about you, where you're from, and stuff like that?
Well, sure. I'm 30. I'm about to be 31 here in another 2 months. My name is James Robert Wright. That's my full legal name. But because all the men in my family were named James, we all sort of got stuck with a different name. So mine growing up was Jay, and that kind of stuck with my friends and still carries on. So, yeah, that's about it. And I'm from Dallas. My family has very strong roots there. They were one of the settling families of North Texas. So we have a deep history there, but unfortunately for me, I'm not really compatible with the Texas way of life, so I moved on out west to California.
You're in Los Angeles now?
Yes.
Good. How you liking Los Angeles?
Oh my gosh, it's wonderful. I mean, I don't know why I didn't come here sooner. I suppose because everything happens for a reason, but I just love it. Every day is exciting. The city is wonderful. I'm right in central LA, so I'm deep in it, but I mean, just the air smells like perfume. It's bright. It's sunny. The people are so cheerful. It's great.
Oh, well, you're in a good part of LA, right?
Oh, yes, yeah, Hollywood, yeah.
There's just so the listeners, I'm from Southern California myself. I grew up in Orange County, which is right next to LA County, and he's in Los Angeles City, which is in LA County. And there's definitely areas in every county here where you could be in one part of the city and it's great, and then you go to another area and it's not so great. You know, you might not want to walk around it at night. And I know Los Angeles can have some areas like that. Is that correct?
Yes, although whenever I'm in transit, I see these places through, outside of the car window or whatever. But honestly, the parts of town that they refer to as bad actually look pretty nice. They're clean, and you don't see a lot of gang banging or whatever you want to call it, going on the streets. So it just seems to be a very clean and peaceful city overall.
Yeah, that's cool. I grew up in Anaheim in Orange County, and I agree there's that culture that's there, but if you don't involve yourself for the most part in it, and you're not around it or in the gangs or anything like that, it's weird how it could be around you, but it won't affect you. So that's what you're going to learn, and I'm sure you had that in Dallas as well, and it's everywhere you go in the country.
Well,
But
the most pressing issue for me personally is the Freemasonic gang is not very prevalent here, but in Dallas, they rule there. So.
yeah, that's interesting. You know, I grew up here in Southern California, and I didn't really learn much about Freemasonry until I got older, and I started researching into different, you know, as they say, conspiracies, and I would find Freemasonry somewhat behind certain things, not necessarily tied to them, but I was really interested in what they were doing. And then, of course, you find out, you know, George Washington was a Freemason, the founders of the country, you know, ex-Freemason. How many Freemasons signed the Constitution? Do you know?
Oh gosh, I can't think of the exact number off the top of my head, but it was over 3/4.
Wow. So, you know, our country, you know, was founded by Freemasons, and it's just incredible when I started learning that. And then I got a couple books by Manly P. Hall, who is a philosopher, 33rd degree Freemason, Master Rosicrucian. You know, one of those books was The Secret Destiny of America, and I was just blown away. It's just that he's a great writer. I just love Manly P. Hall, but just learning about the destiny of America, the Great Seal, and all these things, I was just fascinated. And then as I got further into it, it was just great. You know, I have, of course, Albert Pike's, what is this, Morals and Dogma. I have several other books here, but...
Yeah, well, although I should say that Morals and Dogma, and Albert Pike having written it, and it being the foundation of the Scottish Rite, is really nothing more than an act of plagiarism. It was ripped off of Eliphas Levi's Dogma et Rituel de la Haute Magie. So it was an act of plagiarism that founded that sect of Freemasonry, and of course they don't talk about that. But if you read the two and juxtapose them for yourself, you'll see. I mean, it's just blatantly obvious.
Is there anybody else out there that has those views in Freemasonry as well?
Oh, absolutely. What happens with most guys is if they really take it to that high level, meaning beyond 32nd degree, you get on the Research Society, the Master Craftsman programs, and you study it that in depth, and you actually get access to their private locked libraries and so forth, then you absolutely arrive at these conclusions. And that's one of the things that, you know, like Albert Pike wrote, Masonry conceals its secrets from all but the adepts or elect, and that is so, so true.
Yeah, would he maybe be just a, you know, a successor maybe to Levi as far as carrying on the tradition and just, you know, carrying these traditions on in his book? You know, if you look at a lot of the teachings, of course, Levi didn't invent them, so they're definitely, they're coming from somewhere, and of course they're ancient.
Right.
You know,
I guess in carrying on the whole study and practice of Solomonic magic, you could say that he did. That is, after all, what Freemasonry is built around, because any of these secret societies in their origin have a sort of a magical pact with somebody or other. For, you know, the Templars, obviously it's more common knowledge nowadays that their pact was with Baphomet and that sort of thing. So you always have that connection. So yeah, absolutely. Temple of Solomon and all that. After all, they say that Solomon's temple was not built by men, but rather by the 72 demons of the Goetia. So
when you say Solomonic magic, is this a black or white magic? Is it a combination of both?
It would be a combination of both, because like anybody who's familiar with the Kabbalah will know that, you know, once you get up there toward number 3 on the tree of life, that comes with an awareness that everything is connected, everything is one. And so really black and white magic and yin and yang and all that, technically speaking, are one and the same. It's just two halves of a whole. So
yeah, when I look at it and study, you know, I'm somewhat new to this, about 3 years into the occult and esoteric and Freemasonry, and then, you know, studying you know, magic a little bit. I look at, you know, black magic more of as a perversion of the powers of the spiritual world for the material gain, and where if you're using maybe white magic to purify yourself, to maybe call your ancestors, or, you know, stuff like that, that's not really black magic. You're not perverting the spirit world in order for your material gain. So that's kind of how describe it in a simple way to my listeners out there. Would you agree, or?
Oh, I completely agree. And just to elaborate a little bit on why I agree, for example, the OTO, Ordo Templi Orientis, there's been a lot of misconception with their dogma over the years. That tagline of theirs, "Do what thou wilt, shall be the whole of the law," and people interpret that as a statement of anarchy or something to that effect, when actually what it really means, if you read that stuff, is it just means follow your path, whatever it is you're here to do. So
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah. So, does Freemasonry follow that as well? I mean, it's almost like a. I mean, when you say "do that well," that's Aleister Crowley had coined that phrase, correct?
Yes, he did coin that phrase. I mean, he took it from some older things. Some people argue that there was a Rosicrucian influence and whatnot, but I mean, everybody has their own take on it, and no two takes are necessarily the right one. So, but yeah, the Freemasons, well, that's the thing, is on the lower levels, they're going to sit there and deny to their own membership that stuff has a place in that degree study. And they shun it. They turn their members away from it. There's a lot of young guys right now, when I was going through it and still now, who come in, and a lot of them don't even make it past their first, degree of entered apprentice, because they become so disenfranchised that they throw their hands up and walk away, and they don't go back. So
Is that because they want to learn more of the esoteric kind of right away instead of the pancake breakfast kind of thing?
yes, that is the exact reason. Yes.
Gotcha. I tried to join the Freemasons a while back, but I had an issue in the past with a felony. I'm not proud of, but the past is the past. It's who I am. But I couldn't join. Of course, is that the same in Texas as it is here in California? It's pretty much a standard thing. If you have any type of criminal record, they usually don't accept you as a Freemason.
It's my understanding that when the Grand Lodge of Texas was in session at the end of last year, they were trying to pass a resolution to amend their constitution and make it to where from now on any guys petitioning for the degrees of Freemasonry must go through a standard county background check, or whichever county they're in. And I don't. No, I think it did pass. I'd have to go back and check. I knew it was up for ballot, but they're pushing that. But honestly, it isn't going to make that big of a difference, because the history, as I know it in Texas, is if they like you and want you in bad enough, then they're going to probably overlook that. Of course, if that law is passed, then I'm sure they'll run into some complications with that. However, it's something, when you petition a lodge, they assign a committee of 3 that goes and checks you out at your place of work, at your home, around your family. You go up and you have several dinners at the lodge, and maybe go out to restaurants and that sort of thing. So it's something that they research enough to know whether they want you or not, and that's where the term blackball comes from. If one member votes a blackball in the voting procedure, then you're not going to get it unless you just go somewhere else far and try it there.
Yeah, no, it's understandable. Looking back a few years ago when I applied, I was in Riverside County in a city called Temecula. But I understand exactly why they do that, and why they would even vet members even outside of that before they come in, with what the possible implications that someone could bring to the order. And then, of course, you were involved you're a 32nd degree Freemason. You were involved in the higher echelons of Scottish Rite Freemasonry, correct?
Yes.
Were you working for the Scottish Rite Freemasons there in Dallas, Texas?
Eventually I was, yes. It was really phenomenal. It was never something that I thought would happen. It was just, I was approached one day and they told me that they were putting together this position to help around the Valley of Dallas, and did I want it? They thought I was the best choice, and well, okay, sure. I was a 911 dispatcher at that point, and very happy with that, and uh, so I went and did that, and that put me on as a paid member of the Supreme Council in effect, and that's who wrote my paychecks out of D.C., and it was quite amazing. I mean, it started off wonderful, but being exposed to it at that level was just really, really shocking and disturbing. And um, I don't know that I would do it again over, because it totally ruined all it. Well, but then again, on the flip side of that, had I not done that, I would have not had all of the stark revelations that I did have. So again, everything happening for a reason. I really can't argue the way that fate dealt things. So,
just the way life is, it seems to work out that way. How long did you work for them?
well, I started going down there in right around Christmas of 2009. They said to come down and volunteer some and just get a feel for how I would handle the position. So they were very satisfied with that, and I think they kind of took advantage of that volunteer status for a while, like they love to do with everybody. So it wasn't until March that they actually solidified it and had me down on paper as that position and was paid and all that. So, and then that lasted through October before it got so absolutely unbearable. I mean, they were working me upwards of 90 hours a week. I was sleeping down there, living down there. It just, friends of mine would call me and say, what happened to you? Where are you? Well, I'm working. Don't you ever leave? Well, no.
Did you basically work with 33rd degree Freemasons and other people that were, of course, you had to be a 32nd degree or above to be in that level?
Yes, everybody I was surrounded by was either the jokingly called 32.5 KCCH Knights Commandery Court of Honor degree, which is honorary, and 33rd, yeah.
How do you earn the honorary degree?
There's a little rule that you never in your life ask for it, otherwise they'll jot your name down and you'll never get it. And so if they decide that you're just this stellar Mason and you're promoting the fraternity in a positive light and everything, then you'll get awarded the KCCH. And then if that continues on for a very long time, or if you have $1 million cash ready, disposable to throw them and donate and, have a room named after you or something like that, then that's the other way of getting it. They don't say that, but I mean, I was approached because I have an aunt who's wealthy and was told, well, if you can get her to, you can have the blue room renamed after you. And I'm like, well, then you don't know my aunt very well. She's never going to go for that.
It's not going to throw $1 million at that.
Yeah.
So you were unable to attain that before you had left in October?
Well, yeah, most guys, it's a little toy that they dangle over guys, say jump, you say how high, and most guys don't get the 33rd until they're, in their 60s, 70s. So a whole lifetime of being staunchly obedient to the order.
Gotcha. Let me see here. So you left in October, and you wrote a book shortly right after you left called Occupy Freemasonry. Is that correct? Or
Freemasonry's Cult Abuses, yeah.
Freemasonry's Cult Abuses. Occupy Freemasonry is the website, of course, on Facebook.
Yes, I didn't really start writing it until that following February, because from that time period of October of 2010 to February 2011, I'd never had that cross my mind. I was just going to go on with my life and be done with it. But they were already messing with me so bad and trailing me everywhere I went. Private detectives always following me around. My picture being taken 20 times a day. It was ridiculous. And so, I mean, the harassment, my voicemail being filled up every single week with their messages. I'm talking people like the chairman of the board, the former secretary general, figures in D.C. It was ridiculous how these people were acting. Guys who were quote-unquote pillars of their community, and they were behaving like punky, bully teenagers in high school. It was ridiculous. And that's when I decided, okay, there's a clear and present danger here. I need to take matters into my own hands and protect myself. So that's where I got the idea to come out publicly and reveal all this to better protect myself.
You're under oath still with them, correct?
Yeah, there's really no such thing as an ex-Freemason because according to them, it's sort of like a Hotel California thing.
So when you do these oaths, I mean, is there any kind of, when you get up there into the 32nd, 33rd degree, is there, you know, a life or death kind of oath where there's certain things that you might have heard or been around these, you know, in the upper echelons of Scottish Rite Freemasonry that if you were to reveal that you could possibly not see your life again the next day or shortly thereafter?
Oh, yeah, it starts from the very first night. The entered apprentice degree is have my tongue torn out by its roots and my body buried in the rough sands of the sea, a cable toes length from shore. Then it's the fellow craft is my left breast torn open, my heart and vitals taken thence and cast as a prey to the vultures of the air and the beasts of the field. Then masters is my body severed in twain and my bowels taken thence and burnt to ashes and the ashes scattered to the four winds of heaven. And it just goes up from every degree from there. But in the Scottish Rite, it's not a personalized thing. You have degrees 4 through 32 are basically like these one-act plays that you have these degree teams who are experts that have been doing it for years and years put it on in front of you like an operatic performance, and then you, the candidate, stands up with the rest of the candidates in the audience and recites the oath from a PowerPoint presentation. So it's very impersonable. I mean, they still mean it, but it goes all the way up to 32nd. And then by the time you hit 32nd, you're swearing off your own form of government and adopting what they call the Scottish Rite form of government. And it's pretty crazy.
What is the Scottish Rite Freemasonry? Because it's different than the standard Blue Lodge Freemasonry, correct?
Yes. It didn't. No one. Okay, the Scottish Rite will say that it came from this or it came from that, but honestly, what it was after the Morgan Affair of 1826 and the formation of a political party called the Anti-Masonic Party. Masonry in the United States was basically run underground, and so it retreated into the private mansions of a few high-profile members who kept it quiet and all that, and basically waited for 2 generations to die out before they came back out with it. And when they did, they came out with this Scottish Rite thing, which was based off of a series of European degrees that men traveling on business around the frontier of America in the late 1800s were selling to other Masons as they went from town to town. And, you know, that's part of why you get the phrase a traveling man in Masonry. Any Master Mason is also AKA a traveling man. And so Albert Pike comes into play because he took these degrees. He was well-traveled, and he accumulated a lot of them, and he rewrote and organized them into the 4 through 32 system, and they called this the Scottish Rite, and it's a pendant to Blue Lodge Masonry. Secretly, they would like to confer all degrees 1 through 33, but the Grand Lodge system, because it is a subsidiary of the House of Windsor, will never allow that. And so that's sort of a back and forth that they're always locked in. They call it the war inside Freemasonry.
So the United Grand Lodge of England, that's the UGLE, and then the Scottish Rite, they're completely 2 different divisions of Freemasonry.
Yes, completely divided, yes.
And then the Scottish Rite, my understanding, they originated in Paris, France, or in that area?
Something like that. The history of it's really dodgy, to be honest, but the name Scottish throws people off because all that is a reference to is when the Templars were disbanded in 1307, they fled to Robert the Bruce in Scotland and got amnesty with him. That's where they derived the term Scottish.
Yeah, but it's a worldwide, of course, just like the United Grand Lodge of England. There's lodges everywhere. There's Scottish Rite lodges in Brazil, there'd be in Scotland, there'd be in France, there is in America, correct?
Yes, and even in like Europe, for example, where you hear of maybe the Swedish Rite or Norwegian Rite or things like that, that's still basically saying Scottish Rite. So
Gotcha. You just mentioned the war inside of Freemasonry, and that's actually something new. I don't did you coin that, or is that something that's out there right now that just recently had happened?
it's been that terminology has been floating around for 10 years now. But it's I would say that quote unquote war is something that's a little bit outdated, because that might have been what the struggle was between, whenever you say Grand Lodge or UGLE, you're referring to the York Rite, and then of course there's the Scottish Rite, which is the big kid on the block now, because they've done a lot of things to bankrupt York Rite commanderies and a lot of blue lodges around cities and things like that. And so it's that York versus Scottish thing, and a lot of the older members are still embroiled in that, but it's certainly changed and evolved from that. And now Freemasonry has been placed directly under attack, and of course a lot of people associate me with that. And I suppose, depending on your perspective, yes, I am attacking Freemasonry. However, I'm only doing so because I know exactly, from an up-close and personal vantage point, what is wrong on the highest levels. And so any members that say that, oh, no, that's not possible, that couldn't be going on, he must be exaggerating, he must be making things up. No, I would say to them, well, you've never been around those guys on the Supreme Council for hours out of the day, every day, and you've never spent the night at the Scottish Rite buildings. So it's a whole different world if you were to.
So would the Scottish Rite Freemasons, would they be, say, connected to the George Washington Freemasonry, or was George Washington a part of the United Grand Lodge?
That would have been United Grand Lodge. Now, because the Scottish Rite as an entity didn't really exist then. Now, a lot of people who study the Masonic connections to George Washington know that toward the end of his life, he really started writing to a lot of his confidants and so forth about this threat coming from Europe known as the Illuminati. Well, interestingly enough, the way that he died in the history books is not really an accurate depiction. His Masonic doctors bled him to death is what really happened. And why would they do that, you know? So it's definitely an interesting train of thought to pursue. And, of course, now, in my opinion, the word Illuminati is just a pop culture catch-all phrase. Because
you would attribute them to the Scottish Rite Freemasonry?
The Supreme Council in Washington, D.C., across the street from the White House, yes.
Gotcha. And in regards to Illuminati, they would, of course, make that the term to offset the light from them.
Yes, it's this group that, I mean, yeah, that's part of their disinformation, is point the finger over here and get people looking there when really everything's hidden in perfectly plain sight. And it's them that called for the 3 world wars, which 1 and 2 happened exactly as they prescribed. Now it looks like we're in the throes of the 3rd. And their goal with that, the end game really, is to annihilate Christianity and Islam and atheism, all 3 at the same time. So what you would be left over with is the Freemasonic religion. And they swear up and down it's not a religion, but that's a lie. It is. And it would be a very Old Testament, ancient, Solomonic, Judaic religion.
Are you opposed to the religion as a? I'm not saying I know you are against them right now, but are you opposed to the teachings that they teach?
Well, I'll put it this way: if Freemasonry really did what they say they do publicly, then it would be a good order. But all this high-level corruption and everything factors in, and it's a terrible order.
Well, when you look back at the kind of the history of the world where we come from, it's not, of course, what we learned in school. And you look back, we come back from a violent society. And when I look at the teachings, it's either we're going 2 ways. There's 2 paths. We're either going towards this path that I hope we're not going towards, is this complete New World Order, Nazi kind of state. And then there's the other one that you read about in their literature, and Manly P. Hall and so forth, and then even Plato's Kingdom, that eventually, we're going to go through hell to get to heaven, and that's going to be the philosopher kingdom, and we're going to have these teachings out to everybody. But in order to get there, we have to destroy, of course, everything that's there, and that's would be their motto, right? The Scottish Rite Freemasons is Ordo ab chaos, which is order out of chaos, and right now we're living in chaos. Would you agree, Jay?
I completely agree. Yeah, they coined that phrase.
So the goal would be we all unite and we're one big happy family, correct?
In a sense, but what they don't say is how elitist they are. And it's a pyramid structure. So, when you have your type of guys who are what they call political Masons, these are guys that go into it because they've got their eyes on D.C. They want to be glorified. It's a very egotistical journey for them. And that's something that I'm very, very strongly against. It's a pet peeve of mine. It irritates me.
No, I agree, Jay. I mean, when I look at a lot of in researching and then seeing some of the Freemasons out there, it's totally based on materialism. A lot of them aren't interested in the esoteric or building a better world or anything like that. It's just about what they can get out of it. And of course, I would think that's where the Solomonic magic comes in. As it is operated here in society, it would be operated inside of the lodges. You could use that to get what you need as far as the order needs to get ahead. And, some people could easily be corrupted, and that's a fact. That's an ancient fact. And
the crucial error in judgment, I would say, on behalf of all those high echelon Masons, Supreme Council, otherwise, is they really, 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 truly believe that they can do any sort of bad, horrible, morally bankrupt things in this world, but as long as they do charitable acts as well, that will excuse everything else. And I just don't understand this logic.
Well, if they're doing things to affect their soul and they're doing bad things to people and hurting people, and you always hear these rumors of the Illuminati. There's of course, it's more the Satanists and so forth, sacrificing people, and possibly you hear of molestation. Possibly, is that going on at the upper echelons of Freemasonry, or is that just more like it is, say, in the Catholic Church, where or you have in teachers, or you have policemen, or you have cooks or anything, where they're just part of Freemasonry and that happens, or is that a ritual that goes on?
Oh, it goes on just as much as it does in the Vatican. It's shameful. It centers mainly around demolay, which would be like the Masonic Boy Scouts, to put it one way. And I mean, I'm here to tell you right now, if there's women listening, just do not ever send your sons off to a demolay thing. It's not a good idea. I'm not going to sit here and bash the entire thing. They've done good things, whatever, but it's just not a good idea, because the figures that lurk around those meetings, I would just question a lot of their intentions. Not all, but there, if you spend all your spare time hanging around young boys, there could be a problem. So
would say like the top guys in Freemasonry that you might not ever see, or that are the 33rd degree, would do that type of stuff, or they use that more to control the order, and they understand what happens.
They will say that it's sort of like, well, okay, since Masonry tends to run in families so much, it would basically be like, a youth education in it, preparing you for your adulthood in it. But just in Dallas alone, in the 1980s, the Dallas Scottish Rite was under fire for a huge molestation scandal that went on there with the DeMolay chapter, and the Secretary General that was there in the 80s was directly implicated. He went to prison for it. I mean, it was a mess, and it's largely been forgot in Dallas society because they made such an effort to clean it up and get rid of all that, every memory of the 1980s in the building. But it did happen, that's for sure.
So who's the absolute head of Freemasonry? Scottish Rite Freemasonry?
Ronald Seal, the Sovereign Grand Commander in D.C.
Gotcha. What if he had heard someone had molested someone in his order, what would he do?
He probably wouldn't do a thing. I know directly that he's heard all kinds of misdeeds and been presented evidence of what the guys under his jurisdictional powers have been up to, and he just seems to always take a back seat and allow it.
Yeah, my thing is, I'm big on free will as far as whatever, do that will when you're an adult, but when there's a child involved, that's a different story. So that perturbs me a little bit that, if I was ever in any type of organization and I'd heard of something, I would do my best to clean it out as soon as possible. So I don't understand. And you see this happen in of course, the Catholic Church, and it would be like, if I became Pope, I would go in and just literally go through every diocese and church and make sure there's no molester left, and then I would make sure every single one is prosecuted.
I would assume, based on what I know, I can't prove this, but it seems, if you shook a magic 8-ball and asked it this question, I'm sure that what would come up would all signs point to yes. You have to understand about the nature of the character of these guys that get on the Supreme Council. They didn't get there by chance. They did a lot of cutthroat things to get where they are, and they're not nice people at all by any stretch of the imagination. They are to be handled with extreme caution, and because of how they are, I would naturally assume that they probably at some point gotten something really good on Ronald Seal, and that would be why he has just done nothing to clean up his order in his time there.
So there's, of course, someone above Ronald Seal.
No one is above him. I mean, unless you want to look at it as the consortium of that Supreme Council.
Gotcha. You had mentioned something recently on another show, and it interested me, something about the Knights Templar taking away the rights from the York Rite to call themselves Knights Templar. Is that correct?
That is correct. For America only. They are so mad at the complete mess of things, how everything's been mishandled, all the scandals and everything else, that they've revoked it completely.
The Knights Templar, what Knights Templar group would this be?
It would be their head commandery out of UGLE in London.
Okay, gotcha. And there's no Knights Templar in the Scottish Rite Freemasonry, correct?
There is, but they call it's the 30th degree Knight Kadosh. It's the same degree, but they put that Scottish post-1307 spin on it.
What are the degrees of Scottish Rite Freemasonry? When they start after the 3rd degree of regular Blue Lodge, how does that work?
Yes, most Blue Lodges in America, you will find that if you're sitting in them and you're getting your master's degree, there's always these characters from the Scottish Rite sitting off to the side, calling the shots for some reason, even though there's supposed to be a clear division between Blue Lodge Masonic law and Scottish Rite everything else, but yet they get away with doing that. The Scottish Rite will donate money to a lot of these Blue Lodges to help keep them afloat if they're having hard times, which most are right now. And so they just let them. And so what happens is once you get your master's degree that night, you are practically bum rushed by all these figures and told, you need to do the Scottish Rite next. You need to do it. You need to do it. When actually you have a choice of doing that, the York Rite, the Shrine, or nothing at all.
So what are the purpose of the degrees as you take them? Is it to become enlightened? What happens?
I suppose you could say enlightened, but it's just really to further tell the story, to explain the mysteries and everything. But that's the thing, is it really doesn't do that. They claim that, once you're 32nd, you'll know everything. Maybe not everything, but pretty close, and it doesn't happen. I mean, I remember when I went through the 32nd degree, I sat and looked at my friend sitting to my right in the audience, and we'd been through all our degrees at the same exact time, and I looked at him and said, "You've got to be kidding me. This is it?" Oh, the word, they say we need equilibrium. That's the big royal secret. You need equilibrium in your life. Well, any countless number of people could have told me that, and I already knew that. It's just it starts to unravel just truly how much of a pyramid scam it is, and it's all about making money. It's a big business.
Yeah, I mean, you could see that from outside looking in, and when you look at everything, I've been a member of a couple of small little things and then left. I'm not going to mention them right now, but it was just kind of the same thing. I seemed to be funding the order or donating my time or whatever that was, but there was nothing really new. And then I started to learn it's really the self-work that you do yourself, your personal, I'm big into Gnosticism and, know thyself and stuff like that. And I know a lot of the teachings of Freemasonry, they also teach that, and, they should teach that more, but of course there's a plan behind the orders, they're around the world, and the goal, like you had mentioned, is to eventually knock out all the world's religions and have a one world religion of truth, I guess that would be, right?
Yes, they would like to see that, certainly. And honestly, I don't see a problem with that. It's just these control mechanisms. I mean, because it's mind control. When you go through that first degree of entered apprentice, the reason why, because, I mean, look, I've studied these degrees in major depth. I had the luxury of having that job I had and practically living in the building and keys to everything, able to go through any of the locked bookcases whenever I wanted. And I know of no historical basis in those rituals and degrees, all of it, that calls for all of this bondage, S&M sounding stuff and blood oaths and kill me, kill you, and all that. There's no reason for any of it. That stuff goes back to the Sanhedrin, and it's just pointless. There's no reason for this order to do that, but they want to because they want to keep everybody scared and keep everybody in line, not questioning the leaders, not questioning what you can really do with Masonry or the higher esoteric studies of it. They don't want, and I emphasize this, they do not want anybody getting so empowered that they become a threat.
So, I mean, right now you would be a threat to the order, and then of course you could say certain things, and then you might have some things that that it isn't wise to say. Would I be wise to say that, James?
Well, yes, but I mean, when it comes to them, I talk about anything. No subject is taboo. I go about it with a very transparent attitude, because that's exactly what I think it should have, is transparency. There should not be this disconnect between the order and the public, like there is, like they like.
So, like when they say the Illuminati out there and everybody's looking at Jay-Z and all this stuff, are they products in tied to the Scottish Rite? A lot of these big entertainment companies and so forth.
Well, yes. However, it seems to me, especially being here in Hollywood right now, that the entertainment industry does, well, not the industry whole, but there are artists in it who I think my best conclusion I can offer right now is they use that as part of their publicity. I do not know of Jay-Z or any of these other singers or whoever being members. Because once upon a time I was one of 50 people in the world who had login access to their central database of every Mason on the planet called Sentinel. And I used to go in and for fun when I had a moment and punch up names and to see if something I saw in television or the movies or music or something was, registered, and it never did.
So you had access there. They would be the Prince Hall Masons. There's actually a separate Freemasonries for African Americans, correct?
Oh, yeah, and that's a whole other thing in and of itself. Prince Hall Masonry is the division and the segregation of it is the most blatant, alive and well form of racism in the world today. Because I, as a Blue Lodge Master Mason, I can go to any Prince Hall Lodge I want in the world and walk right in and be treated as a dignitary. However, no Prince Hall Mason, even though they do the same rituals and in most cases take them a lot more seriously than white Masons, they're not allowed to sit in our lodges, plain and simple.
But they could become a 33rd degree Freemason?
In the Prince Hall system, yes.
Gotcha. But completely different than the Scottish Rite?
Yes, they're not allowed to come sit in the Scottish Rite, nothing.
Interesting. Sounds like I mentioned that I had a felony. I actually went to prison. That's how prison is. We're segregated all in there, and it's just the way it is. And you just fall in line, and that's how it works. And then, of course, when you get on the street, it's not like that. But it's interesting that it's kind of like that. And I'm sure it's in the lodge, it's like that, but in the street, they're cool with it, and they work together, and they might have friends. It's interesting that it's still like that.
Well, what they'll do, and I was there for some of these events at the Dallas Scottish Rite, they'll have a Prince Hall Lodge in or something on a Saturday or a Sunday and treat them really nice and make them feel like they're included and loved and all that. But it's just a public relations stunt.
So when you get into the 33rd degree, I mean, you have to have would you say the right blood and the right race to be of that degree of the Scottish Rite, or does that matter?
I would say it absolutely matters. They don't come out and say that. That's a very taboo topic around there. But, I mean, if you walk into a Scottish Rite cathedral, which there's one in every major city, the first thing you'll probably notice is any of the guys walking around that are in charge of the place, they're going to look very European, Aryan. They're probably going to have blonde hair, blue eyes, or red hair, green eyes, and yeah, they absolutely follow that. I mean, you could broach that subject matter of the Merovingians, the Cambrian Franks, and all that, but yes, they really do. Which the Merovingians are all tied into these Templar bloodlines, so that kind of would be synonymous, I suppose.
So it wouldn't be just centered on the Merovingians. Of course, there's other bloodlines, but they come from a similar tribe that is the similar blood, but maybe different lines of that tribe. Is there such a thing as the 13 Illuminati bloodlines or anything like that?
Oh, God, yes. You can, I mean, just as an example, you can go to DallasScottishRite.org and click on the tab Officers and see everybody currently in charge there, and the list of last names pretty much reads like any of those lists you see if you Google 13 bloodlines, yes.
Gotcha. So do you know any of those families? Can you mention those right now? Do you know them off the top of your head, Jay?
Well, I mean, I know them, but you've got Collins and Reynolds, and the problem, though, is now, especially considering that the science behind this stuff means that if you get it, you inherit the bulk of it through the mitochondrial, aka female, side of your lineage. So it comes from the mother, and therefore you have your father's last name. So really, it's difficult modern day to tell who is and who isn't, because like my last name, Wright, it means nothing. It's just the name of one of my mother's husbands. So
gotcha. So you're not. Do you know if you're related to any of the famous Wrights? I mean, you had mentioned that you're, of course, from the beginnings of Texas, and I remember the Wright brothers and stuff like. Do you know if you're related to them?
No, I'm not.
Okay. And then when you say it basically, this is all based on the DNA of the mother. These bloodlines.
Primarily, yes.
Gotcha. Do you know what haplogroup that is by any chance?
I shy away from all that stuff. It's a little too sciencey for me.
No, it's just interesting because I'm interested in DNA, and we're going to talk here in a little bit about the Imperial Royal Dragon Court, and I was really interested in that type of stuff for some reason I just got interested in DNA and blood and bloodlines and stuff like that. And I was like, hey, you know, I want to find out who I am. You know, I didn't know who I was. My parents basically, they only knew back, you know, to their grandparents, and they barely, you know, I asked them about my past, and oh, don't worry about it, you know, and tell me a couple things. And I was like, what? I want to know who I am, where we come from, you know. And I basically had to do my own research, and I can get back so far. And I come from a French background, Canada, and of course from Canada, New France. They come from France. But then I got a DNA test, and it was interesting to find out on my mother's side I was related to a lot of people are in this haplogroup. It's the H haplogroup, to Marie Antoinette and different royal peoples, and I think Queen Victoria. And I was just like, wow. And on my father's side, I was related to a lot of people that were in the Catholic Church and come from, you know, northern Africa, the Phoenicians. So it was kind of interesting. Have you ever had a DNA test yourself?
I've had it, but I've never been able to see what the results were for some strange reason. I don't know why.
Gotcha. Was this recently before you had joined the Imperial Royal Dragon Court, or?
Well, as far as that Dragon Court is concerned, I mean, Nicholas DeVere was a really good friend of mine and somebody I considered a mentor. Now, as far as my involvement goes with that court, I always kept it at a bit of a distance because it seemed like to me throughout the years, which I've had loose associations with it for, gosh, what, 13 years now. It's just not something that I really ever wanted to mess around with my full time, because I'm sure anybody that knows anything about it at all is that scandal and the court tend to be synonymous, and there is a reason for that. It's actually a very simple explanation. To give a quick history lesson.
Yeah, what is the Imperial Royal Dragon Court, and then go into that, if you could, please.
Well, it's okay. Let me explain it this way. I sent you that page and
correct, yeah,
all the titles it is. What happens is, since it was Sarkeni Rind in 1408 in Hungary, when it was founded 101 years after the Purge of the Templars, every time that it changes Grand Masters, one of the customs of the order is the new Grand Master sort of renames it something else. And so it's operated under all these different names throughout the centuries, such as the Order of Melazine, such as the Priory of Sion, such as Dragon Court, Dragon Order, Dragon Society.
So this is the same order from the original Priory of Sion, the original.
It's invoked that name and used it for a current generation several times throughout its history, yes.
And this would be the legal successor of that order?
Yes, if you want to look at it like a company, then the Priory would be a subsidiary holding, yes.
Gotcha. And so basically what happened recently, Nicholas DeVere, he was the Grand Master of the Imperial Royal Dragon Court, and he was found, was it a couple weeks ago, dead, and there's some questionable circumstances surrounding his death in your mind, and of course he's involved in the occult. I don't know exactly. I didn't know Nicholas DeVere. I at one time I tried to be a member of the Imperial Royal Dragon Court. That's why I got my DNA test, actually, and then I got it for myself, but also to join. I'm glad I did, but you know, there's a lot of drama going on at that time. This was a few years ago, and it continued. It seemed like the whole order had blown up, and
well,
I think
the reason for that, yeah, that is correct, and the reason would be, as an order, it's really unexplainable, actually. There's always been a lot of people who have followed it, and whenever they feel, not all of them, but a lot of them feel that I don't know, that they're not getting the attention they feel they want, or they weren't admitted just right off the bat because they felt they should and then felt jilted or something. I don't know. I suppose everybody has a different experience, but there's a lot of nastiness and meanness that arises from people who feel jilted. And I mean, I don't think that people have ever quite understood that my associations with it, Nick was a very good friend, but it took years before he actually gave me any kind of title. And when he did, I said I didn't want it. I was touched that a friend of mine thought so highly of me as to give me a title in his order that he was Grand Master of, but it was just something that I always handled with kid gloves because I never wanted to get sucked into all of that drama, as you said, and all that, because it's just been rife with it on the outside. But on the inside, it was actually a pretty peaceful order where everybody was on the same page, everybody got along, to the best of my understanding of it. And like I said, Nick was a very good friend and the source of really good advice, and he's been quite a scandalous figure, but there's a simple explanation for this. See, if you want to go back to its previous form, before Nick was Grand Master, the previous Grand Master was a man named Martin Lunn, who wrote The Da Vinci Code Decoded and was in the documentary of the same name, and he operated it under the name of Dragon Society. And then there was also that European Council of Princes and all that stuff, which was, interestingly enough, Queen Elizabeth II had representatives in it. There were intelligence community people surrounding it. It was a big deal back at that time, and quite shadowy, I would say. However, there was a group of friends at this point in time, and these friends were Martin Lunn, Nicholas de Vere, Michael LaFosse, a.k.a. Prince Michael of Albany, one of the heads of the Stuart houses, and Lawrence Gardner, and a man named Richard Dufton. Well, when Martin Lunn left it to his protege, Nicholas de Vere, this group of friends, 5 of them, kind of had a real nasty division occur between them. I guess there was some jealousy or some resentment, I don't know, but they all seemed to part their separate ways, and a lot of them were very angry with Nick. And even still to this day, this man, Richard Dufton, is still very jilted by what he feels cheated out of, I guess you could say, or whatever. I don't know him. I just know of the things that he has said and done. And he's put so much information out on the internet, on free websites and social media, Facebook, etc., alleging all sorts of just heinous, despicable, horribly untrue, slanderous things about Nick. And a lot of people don't know better than to research their information through reliable sources, and they believe what they read on these websites. And it's just a shame, because Nick is one of the most honorable, chivalric, charitable, loving, kind, generous men to the world that I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. I've never known this guy to be anything less than what I just said. And yet there's people out there who paint this picture like he's this, I've heard him called an antichrist, to a Satanist, to any kind of word like that. And it's just not true. He was a family man. He was very religious. It's just ridiculous what people say about him, and that's such a shame.
Yeah, I was on the sidelines, and of course I didn't get involved in the mudslinging. We all have our issues. The one thing that I did hear, which is no big deal because I've had my own issues, was his drinking, and everybody has an issue, and some people like to drink, and I think would that be his only issue that you would see if there was?
Oh, yeah. Nick liked to drink. I wouldn't consider, I've been related to some very rampant alcoholics, so I wouldn't consider him that from my own personal experience with them. But, yes, he knew how to put down some drinks. And But, you know, he was getting older, and that's what people don't realize about him was he was an intelligent, rational man. And
Yeah, how old was he, by the way? Do you know?
he was in his mid-60s.
Oh, wow.
So it's it's a situation where he'd had doctors tell him, you know, you can't keep doing this, and he knew that. So he had actually stopped. And
At the time of his death, he wasn't drinking, to
no,
the best of your
absolutely
knowledge.
not.
Wow. And then the questionable circumstances surrounding his death, you think it's possibly a murder?
Oh, I believe that wholeheartedly, and I always will, because I know what happened, and he was found naked in a pile of broken glass. And when I say a pile, I mean every single item of glass in his kitchen, all the china, everything was.
Why would someone want to murder him?
Well, that's the question. I mean, anything I say at this point would be speculative about that. Nick had a lot of enemies, as outspoken as he was against the institutions of the Vatican, Freemasonry, the House of Windsor.
Was he a Freemason himself?
Yes, he had done that earlier in life, but also become disenfranchised like I did, and we understood each other on that level.
Gotcha. He would be involved in the UGLE side of it?
Yes, he. I guess I should go ahead and it's relatively safe to say this. His associations were with the infamous P2 Lodge.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. And then he was still speaking out against the Vatican. Is the Vatican, would you say they've been infiltrated by Freemasonry years ago?
Oh, God, yes. The crossover degree in Freemasonry is the Knight of Malta degree, yes.
Gotcha. And then what degree is that?
Oh, gosh. You're jogging my memory. It's in the 20s.
Okay.
They all run together for me nowadays. But, yeah, it's just, and I should also say as a disclaimer to anyone listening, my work and my career is in no way based off of this dragon court or priory or any of that. I work with Freemasonry and the truth movement and all that stuff. So there's a lot of people out there right now trying to say things on behalf of the dragon court or whatever. One, these are people who were not, and will not ever have an association with it because now it's basically defunct until someone may or may not do something with it. And also, I'm not standing to gain or lose anything from this because my career is in no way based off of it. So
you have no role at all in the Dragon Court right now? You're just basically just kind of mentioning, I asked you a question.
I am one of 13 board members that is left with the task of running Nick's company, but and on that note, I can't really go into anything deeper, but I will say on a personal level that as far as I'm concerned, it just needs to fade into historical accounts. I don't see a point in, well, okay, I'll put it this way. I have to choose my words carefully on this. I apologize because I am a member of that board, but it seems to me that the person with the royal signature for those international foreign policy circles is now deceased, if that makes any sense.
So
there's no one else left that's royal. So.
Gotcha. So okay, let me see here. So who's it left? Whose hands is it left in right now, the Dragon Court? Just the 13, like a council of 13?
No, it's a real company and based out of London, and it's just a board of directors. There's no occult overtones there or anything. That's just the number of people that he chose to put on the board. There were going to be some more added in the future, but he's dead, and we'll never know who that will be.
And then the Priory of Sion also would die with it as well, if it was ever to be completely defunct.
Well, I mean, technically the Priory has been dead, but the thing about it is any of those previous states of the court, it had the right and luxury of resurrecting at any time it wanted. So that's why that's what people familiar who follow the priory stuff over the years, they see a history of it coming up and surfacing and going back down and coming up and surfacing, and so on, and that's the reason why.
What would the Scottish Rite, like say a 33rd degree Freemason or the UGLE, think about the Dragon Court?
They are not fans of that at all. I was present for a phone call in December, this past December, where Nick called and kind of made some brazen threats to the Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite, saying that their days were numbered, they were going down, and it was sort of a high level, jousting match, if you will. So,
would you say, does Nick have other backing besides the Imperial Royal Dragon Court? Well, the P2 Lodge, of course, right?
I would not say that the P2 Lodge was a backer. I know that he still had friends there, but he was definitely largely separated from that environment and had been so for a couple decades. It has backers, but as to who and what those are, I really can't say, and that's out of ignorance because it's such shadowy groups. It has to do with, on one hand, if anybody is familiar with the stuff that Benjamin Fulford has been putting out lately, or Leo Zagami, it's got to do with that lawsuit going on right now at the UN with the World Bank and all that about these so-called dragon families and the trillions of dollars in gold that's missing and whatnot. And I will say that I've been approached since his death and had some financiers identify themselves to me and say that, they would really like to see this continue on. However, in what form would be the big question. And honestly, I haven't had much time to deal with it. I've been dealing with my own work, my own career, completely independent of all that. And it's just something that I suppose once what is meant to happen will, but people should be very clear that, this is of course my opinion, but anything to do with matters that you label as priory or the Dragon Court or whatever those are the good guys. Those are the guys who want the Vatican and all of their sickness removed from power, and the same with the House of Windsor, and the same with Freemasonry, and all this stuff is all tied in together.
How could they do that? How could that happen? Do you see that with these financiers that have recently contacted you and these connections? If like you had said, you're part of the other group that has defected. You saw enough of the sickness and the things out there, and there's enough is enough, and there needs to be the guys out there that are good and transparent and the truth and so forth. That'd be great to see that happen.
Well, this has been a really interesting last month, and it was basically put to me by these people that Nick's death and the Pope resigning and Queen Beatrice of the Netherlands resigning, and now the rumors of Queen Elizabeth II resigning are all tied in together. And not to mention the countless world bankers who've resigned.
Well, it would make sense. There's a lot of signs and signals that we could see out there, and it does look like the apocalypse is full steam ahead, and then we had the Eastern Orthodox Church just recently had, at the Pope's inauguration, they had came for the first time in 1,000 years, and then it was the service was said in Greek for the first time, I believe, in ever. So there's something definitely going on, and then with the mentioned, Pope Benedict resigning and the new Pope coming in, and the dates, I think it was March 13th, 2013. It's just incredible seeing all these signs, and it's just right there in front of us happening. Full steam ahead, it seems like.
Oh, yes, this stuff is more important than people may realize, and I don't even have a good grasp on what all is really, truly going on, and I'm deep in it, it seems. So it's...
Well, what was interesting to me is I did some research, that kind of piqued my interest, because I'm finding out I have some Greek origins as well, to see the Eastern Orthodox Church. There seem to be getting chummy and with the Vatican, and they're both basically Rome, the old Rome. But it's really when you I hear Rome, I don't think of Rome as this little place in Italy. I think of it as a worldwide kind of thing, and it seems like it's coming, it's here, and it's just a matter of them implementing everything. Then this week there was, I believe, the British military had came here to America to meet with American military, and that was the first time, I think, since World War II. Did you hear about that?
No, I missed that. That's very interesting.
Yeah, so that, I mean, I would think goes along the lines with Freemasonry as well, because we have the Scottish Rite here, right? And then the United Grand Lodge with the House of Windsor, and then the High Military. And then today, just we had a helicopter company, I guess, is taking over the search and rescue company that Prince William has been manning. So he's going to be out of a job because some American company is going to be handling the search and rescue for Britain.
Huh.
So this is like fast. Do you agree?
Yeah, that's wow. Yeah, I need to turn on CNN more often, I guess.
Well, it's not on. It's all these pieces of media. Like everybody I talk to and I learn, you just learn these little different things. It's not like one web page where you're going to see all these connections. But if you connect all the dots, you could see that it's happening, rather quickly. So let me see here. Do you speak French at all?
Oh God, it just a teeny bit. I mean, I can. If somebody's speaking, it would be basically like getting through a restaurant or a terminal. It's not that good, but I do speak German. So
yeah, and I had, I'm a friend of yours on Facebook as well, and I recommend you like his page, Occupy Freemasonry. But
oh, yes, and about that, be sure that it's typed in as one word, Facebook.com/Occupy Freemasonry as one word, because right after that page was made in July of last year, the Masons went in as part of their usual daily disinformation campaign, and 1 month later in August created a page that's Occupy either space or underscore Freemasonry. And so if people type in the separation of the words, it goes to that, and then it takes them to a website that's all about how cool and fun and interesting Masonry is.
Clever guys, huh?
Oh yeah, well, but it's the same old tactics they've been doing forever. They don't tend to think of a lot of new ideas.
What would your dream be to happen in these secret societies if you could change anything with what you're doing, and if they were ever to clean out Freemasonry, Scottish Rite Freemasonry, and the Vatican? What would be your dream?
My dream would be with Nick. We were, as friends, completely independent of that Dragon Court, working on a project, just the two of us, for quite a while. And we were calling it the Magdalene Rite. And what this was going to be was, it would be like a return to the Gnostic form of pre-Constantine Christianity, the previous form of Freemasonry when it really was a public and transparent order, and that's what it was, is to remove all these blood oaths, remove all of this sadomasochism, and put transparency back in, give it back to the people, and make it what it claims it is. Revert back to a previous golden age form of it that worked, admit women, and so forth. And I mean, that's something that I am carrying on privately in my own time. With Nick being gone, it doubles my work, but it is a good sound idea, and some things are in the work. I mean, people have approached me and spoken to me about it, and I've had some serious meetings about it, but it's not something I'm ready to take out on the streets today or tomorrow. So,
Would this have to be performed in person, or is this something someone does themselves? Because, Gnosticism, for the listeners that don't know out there, it's basically it's gnosis, it's knowledge of thyself, and it's really a...
Yeah, this would be completely open and free. It would have no intention whatsoever of selling degrees like Freemasonry does presently.
Yeah, there's a lot of orders out there that that do that. You have to pay, and I was a member of a couple, and I am not no longer. And there's a couple orders that I didn't join. It was like you send them an email and you want to get information, and it's like send us $100, and then we'll email you some PDFs, and it's just like I'm not interested in that, and more looking for a circle of brothers and sisters is what I was looking for, that are looking for truth, and that respect each other, and everybody's on their own path, and it's free will, and no one's fucking perfect out there, and that's what everybody needs to understand, and stop looking at people with a log in their eye, and just accept people and stuff like that. And I kind of saw that with the Imperial Royal Dragon Court at first, and then there was the drama, but it seemed like that's where you guys were going, so hopefully something, might happen with that, because I know there's a lot of people out there that are looking for something, and we're all over the world, and
on that note, I should add that if anyone is coming across something on the internet, Facebook especially, that claims that it represents the IRDC, Dragon Court, anything of the kind, any denomination of those words, I guarantee you right now, it's somebody is running it that's a charlatan and is just looking to dupe you and make money off of you and inflate their own egos off of your interest in them. And
well, on that note, I am a member of a web page, and I know that the guys running it aren't the actual members, but I don't know for sure. There is a web page, on Facebook, the Imperial Royal Dragon Court. Is that the page you're talking about?
There's so many. I'm certain that's one of them. Yes, but there's no. As a company, there is no initiative right now to maintain any kind of website or anything. It's now. I don't knock the fact that there are people out there with good intentions who wish to try and spread Nick's work and his books, The Dragon Legacy, The Dragon Seed. That's great. That's touching. That's fantastic. But to sit there and say that you are a member of that court, or that you represent it, or that you're running it, or any of this kind of stuff, and now, of course, in lieu of his death, that's just increased 20-fold with people. And no, it's just, you need to be very careful psychologically,
Yeah, definitely. And I want to, disclosure here. There's been no one in that group that I know that has said it, but it's mainly people that were a member of it and that weren't really on the council or anything like that. But there's no one claiming that in the group that I'm a member of. Again, I just go on there because you find out everything that's going on right away, and there's some interesting discussions and so forth. But again, I just want to disclose that to you, that there's no one there. And
yeah, I can't speak from personal experience as far as I don't go in and look at those things, because I have before in the past, and every time I've been to one, there's always something at some point that is said in a very disgusting manner about Nick, and I can't read that stuff, especially now that he's dead. He was too good of a friend, and to see that or hear that is just like, oh God, not this again.
Gotcha. No, I understand. There was a couple things, I'm not going to mention it. I just don't get involved. I don't know. I'm not privy to it. And people have said things about me. I have a mortgage website I started in 2007, and I was really high profile, and I had a lot of people hate on me, and then some of it was real dirt that, because of my previous issues with the law, and then a lot of it was made up, and I understand the nature of the beast and jealousy and people out there, and it gets ugly, and when you're high profile or a grand master or, just a webmaster of a high profile website, you could come under attack, and I assume, with yourself coming out right now with your book and your second book, what's the name of your second book?
It's going to be called Freemasonry's Filthy Rituals.
Freemasonry's Filthy Rituals. Interesting. I definitely recommend you. Where can they check? Is this going to be also New Falcon Publications as well?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and that's where you can get his current book right now, Freemasonry's Cult Abuses, Human and Gay Rights Controversy is the subtitle. Right now it's at New Falcon Publications. It's newfalconbooks.net.
Kindle on Amazon last week, or the week before, excuse me.
Okay, cool. And it's only $9.99, so it's a great price. It's gonna learn some inside secrets about Freemasonry and what's going on, and then also help James Robert Wright, and I call him Jay, and help him out with his cause and his second book that he has coming out. And then if you also want to donate to him, you can also donate to him. He's not making a lot of money right now. How's that going? Do you have anybody helping you at all right here in Los Angeles?
Well, my publisher mainly, they've been very gracious with, helping me to survive. So, I mean, I really can't complain. I'm in a wonderful apartment in a wonderful location, but aside from that, yeah, I'm on a shoestring budget.
Yeah, no, that's cool. How did you hook up with this publisher?
They were recommended to me by a very, very good friend, Lon Milo Duquette.
Oh, okay. Cool, yeah, and he's in Los Angeles as well, correct?
Yes.
And he's a Freemason. Is he a 32nd degree Freemason, correct?
Yes, he is.
Great, and he has no issues with, I mean, of course, you were in Dallas. It's a little bit different. I know you have the different lodges, California and Texas, and is he a Scottish Rite Freemason? You have to be a Scottish Rite to be a 32nd, correct?
Yes, he is, and I would say, I don't want to speak for my friend, but he is a good and obedient Mason, so he's not at all in any way, shape, form, or fashion involved in my work. Our only tie really is that we're under the same label, but
yeah, and you're still friends even though you have a different view. He seems like such, I don't know the man, but he seems like such a cool, laid-back dude.
Oh, yeah, totally. He's not only that, but he's a complete wise man, sage of our time. He's an accomplished researcher, author, musician. It's crazy how talented he is. But when we hang out, we don't. The masonry pink elephant in the room doesn't really come up. So.
Yeah, I mean it's old news to you guys, right?
Yeah.
So that's cool. I really enjoyed the conversation I had with you today, Jay. It is a pleasure, and you shared a lot with us, and it's cool to ask you different questions than you've been asked on other interviews, and you've been upright in sharing the truth and the light with the audience, and I appreciate that.
Well, thank you, Mo, and I mean, hey, thanks for having the courage to ask those questions, because right now a lot of people are shying away from them, and I've even heard a couple of figures I know on the radio talking about the Dragon Court. I'm not even going to name their names because I don't want to give it any energy, but these are people who make their living off writing about that, and they're just trying to sell books and cause more shock value. And no, like I said, I have nothing really, aside from being a board member on that company and not really caring, to be blunt, I have nothing to gain or lose by speaking about that. All I want is to see justice for a friend who was the victim of an unlawful killing. That's it.
Yeah, so basically your stance on that is it's questionable and you want it looked into further.
Oh, God, yes. But unfortunately, I think the reality of this that everybody's going to have to accept is if Mohammed Al-Fayed, a powerful billionaire, could never get a successful inquest for the death of Diana, then what hope do we have of ever getting one for Nick? Because the British authorities take oaths of allegiance to the Queen. So that's where that road ends.
Was he wealthy?
Yes, he was. And there's quite a bit of money in that company, and a lot of people are targeting it now. Yes.
Gotcha. So there's listeners, expect to hear more, and keep an eye on what James is doing out there, his books and his webpage, and you can hear what's really going on with the Illuminati and Freemasonry and secret societies as opposed to the fake stuff you guys see out there on YouTube. Thanks again for your time, Jay, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you very much, Mo.
All right, take care.